Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 U.S. Open Calls Data Dive Show. I am Nick, your host, and we've got a lot to get into. Get into it here in a moment. A couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow will be a special episode that will be for major weeks only. A complete player-by-player breakdown, going from the top to John Rahm all the way to players that you've probably never heard of, I've never heard of. So, complete player-by-player breakdown coming tomorrow. Smash that like button for the extra content. Subscribe to the channel. And the other quick announcement, as always, all stats provided by FantasyNational.com. Amazing resource. Go check them out. Highly recommended. But because we have so much to get into, let's get started. And tonight we're going to start with the basic homepage for this week of Fantasy National. And excuse me while I fix this camera real quick. This is what comes up at Fantasy National, if you remember, and it'll show the strokes gained base, what I'll call the basic level for the major statistics. So you got strokes gained total, strokes gained tee to green, which is everything but putting, strokes gained ball striking, which is off the tee and approach, short gain, which is around the green and putting, and then the individual off the tee, approach, around the green and putting. They also have a DraftKings points statistic where if you rank by DraftKings points, it'll say on average, here are the golfers or players that average the most in, I believe it's classic DraftKings scoring models. Just a quick rundown of that. Birdies are a full point, pars are a half a point, bogeys you lose a half a point, and other criteria fall in there, bogey free rounds and such like that. I don't pay too much attention to this, but it's a neat little statistic if you're into DraftKings Daily Fantasy, which I am, but I do my own research without looking at that column. So the basic homepage here starts with, let's go strokes gained total, and the top player in the past 50 rounds. So I wanted to take a big picture view, who has had a lot of form basically all year. And should be no surprise, Jordan Spieth is number one. He's had to call it a resurgent season is an understatement. He has come back in a major way, playing some excellent golf like the old Jordan Spieth. Victor Hovland has had a great season. Xander Schauffele, who is always just a consistent top 10 threat on the PGA Tour. John Rahm, one of the best players in the world. Bryson DeChambeau. So when you sort by strokes gained total, you get some pretty interesting names that kind of creep to the top from a DraftKings salary standpoint. You have Abraham Answer, who has had quietly, because he has not won, has quietly had a very, very successful year. Charlie Hoffman, I've explained or talked about many a time. He's just absolute on fire right now. Is not playing very well around the green, but Colin Morikawa, always number one in strokes gained approach. Charlie Hoffman's number two. He's just been playing some amazing golf. But the more interesting data that I would like to look at is down here at the bottom. These are players who have had 0 rounds, so their stats just flat don't show up. And then you'll have others like Alvaro Ortiz here, who is a member on other tours, but has a few rounds here. So they will have some stats, but not all. So don't freak out if you don't see all the statistics for some of the foreign players or members on other tours. But you come down to the bottom of this list here, and let's see, make sure, hopefully you can see that at the bottom. Let's see, you all are seeing is Jimmy Walker. There's not a lot of interesting names below that, full disclosure. But Jimmy Walker at the bottom, you can see 134th has not been playing well, although he's made a cut or two recently. This was your U.S. Open winner at Baltusrol. Can't quite remember the year, 2015 maybe, 2014. But he came to sixth at the Memorial, so he played pretty well at Muirfield. But you look down at some previous performances here. I mean, he missed the cut at the Charles Schwab, made the cut, I believe, on the number at the PGA, missed the cut at Byron Nelson. So he's had some inconsistent finishes here. A lot of missed cuts, especially at the early part of this year. And the Farmers, the same course that's being played here for the U.S. Open, missed the cut at the Farmers and did not play particularly well at all. Another very good comp course for Torrey Pines is Riviera. Riviera is, as far as I know, and please comment below if I'm mistaken in this, Riviera, which is where the Genesis Open is played, is the only other course I know of that has Kikuyu in fairway and rough, which is what Torrey Pines has. Both California courses. The Riviera is right outside Los Angeles. Torrey Pines right outside San Diego. And you can see Jimmy Walker did not play well this year at the Genesis at all. So he's at the bottom of this ranking list by strokes gained total. You move on up a little bit up the lead. Cameron up the leaderboard, I guess, for strokes gained total. Cameron Champ, big long hitter off the tee, long hitter, just is it's almost like the closer he gets to the hole, the worse he is. Just this course will not suit him seemingly very well at all. You got Cameron Champ, Chez Reavie, Henrik Stenson, who is seemingly a shell of himself. In the late 2000s, early 2010s, Henrik Stenson was a force to be reckoned with, and now he's just not playing well. Like I said, he's a shell of his former self. Been pretty good with his irons lately, but other than that, you can tell here, just not very good at all. But the one person I wanted to highlight here, Phil Mickelson, 111th. Now, yes, he just won the PGA. I get it. But if you look across his stat board here, it is not very pretty. He had some pretty magical stuff that week at Kiowa. None which more the wind. It was very windy, if you'll recall. But that wind, especially on Sunday, favored a left-handed golfer. Just because of the way it was coming off the ocean there. It's set up perfectly for a left-handed golfer. And Phil Mickelson, who was playing really good golf that week, I'm not going to take anything away from him. But before the PGA, we'll see. I mean, he missed the cut the next week at the Charles Schwab. Barely made the cut at the Wells Fargo. Missed at Valspar. Did play well at the Masters. I mean, he's had some uneven finishes. Missed cuts. Had a couple of decent weeks, but it's missed cut. Top of the leaderboard, or when he does make the cut, is very, 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 just not a very good tournament if he even makes the cut. And then again, having played the Farmers earlier this year, he made the cut. It wasn't anything outstanding. Lost a whole lot of strokes off the tee. Did play well on his approach and his putting, so that is something to look at a little bit this week. Me personally, I think he's a bit overpriced. at 77, I believe, on DraftKings. So I'm just avoiding Phil Mickelson. Great story. If he completes the career Grand Slam, all the power to him. I'm gonna lose my ass gambling on that, but I don't see it. I just really wanted to highlight Phil Mickelson down here at the bottom, kind of going up a little bit here. There's not a lot. Francesco Molinari, who won the Masters, I believe, 2000 and no, he won the U.S. Open. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. Won the British Open or the Open Championship in 2018. He's won the Arnold Palmer, but he's just not playing very good either right now, and he is a prominent figure, or at least used to be in the world of golf. He has not been playing well at all. He was one of the players most affected by the COVID shutdown last year. In that process, he was moving his family to the United States. He's Italian. Moving his family to the United States, so I believe he's based now in California. So there's a little bit of an angle there if you want to play it. He did play well here earlier this year. 10th, missed or lost a little bit of strokes on the greens, but I mean, tee to green, immaculate. Very good. He was dialed in with his irons, and you can see when he gains, he generally has a lot of firepower with those irons. You know, gain 3, gain 1.5, gain 4, gain 3. But there are weeks -5. That's kind of a bit of an outlier here for Molinari. He is somebody that I'm kind of looking at putting on the short list, if you so to say, which I'll have the player-by-player breakdown tomorrow, and then Wednesday, as always, is the DFS Tactics show, and I'll really dig into the DraftKings salary and the betting board around on Wednesday. Although I will say at the end of the show, I've got quite a few bets that I'm really considering, and I've made a couple. And the last thing about Molinari, and you saw where he had an immaculate week here at Torrey Pines earlier this year, but lost strokes on the green. POA is his absolute worst putting surface by far. Loses almost a half a stroke per round on POA greens. So, for obvious reasons, someone to be wary of, but I think just because of the ball striking and how tough the course is going to play, I like Molinari on a DFS side. I'm not so sure about outright betting him in the sports book, but DFS side, I'm going to take a look. But so here's the kind of rankings for the strokes gained total. And just to give you an idea, I always value approach. Number one, if someone's striking their irons, if they're ball striking very well, that's generally going to set them up for success putting. And that means if they're striking their irons well, they're either hitting their tee shots in the fairway or putting the ball where they want to have success with their irons. So no surprise, the past 50 rounds, Colin Morikawa always going to be number one or generally top 3 in strokes gained approach. He's one of the best iron players in the world, if not the best already. As I talked about at the beginning of this, Charlie Hoffman, has been playing amazing with the irons. Justin Thomas, Corey Connors, Will Zalatoris, Henley, Koepka, Johnson, DJ, Matthew Wolff, who has been kind of out of everyone's radar, rightfully so, because he's been injured. He's just been out of the limelight after having a very successful 2020 season where he had 2 runner-ups in majors last year. Jordan Spieth's been playing well. So you can see the names that kind of gravitate towards the top. in strokes gained approach and generally in my models, just because I value approach so much. But off the tee is going to be very important here. You're going to have to hit fairways, as I talked about last night in the initial research show, and as you saw the flyover videos, the contour of the fairways, the slopes. You're going to have to make sure you put the ball in position where you can attack some of these holes and try to survive on the ones that are difficult. And strokes gained off the tee, generally speaking, if you're an aggressive driver of the golf ball, and on this course there is so much risk reward, if you want to take on the bunkers, these fairway bunkers at Torrey Pines, and you're able to thread that needle, you are gaining significant advantage over the field. I'm really going to value off the tee this week. No surprise, Bryson DeChambeau is number one for sheer distance. Hitting the fairways, not so much, but he's the one player that kind of breaks the model, so to say, in that he is so strong. The thick rough affects him much less than other players. Whatever you want to say about the way he goes about playing golf and whatnot, the results certainly speak for themselves. I'm surprised to see Sergio off the tee. He's been playing very well. Just close your eyes, literally, like he does when he putts. Some of you that may not know, he's actually tried in competitive rounds closing his eyes for putting. That's when you're trying just about everything on the green. John Rahm, Johnny Vegas, who had a really good week last week at Palmetto, Victor Hovland, Corey Connors, somebody who is someone to look for this week if he's playing very well off the tee and on approach. His around the green game suffers. He's not known as a very good putter. He has improved, though. Corey Connors is somebody that is someone to look for this week. Bubba Watson, Cameron Champ. So you can see some of the names that gravitate when you really factor in just driving the golf ball. I don't want to get too much into the overall stuff, but another great thing about Fantasy National, you have so many filters that you can set these models to, these rankings. So if, let's say, you want to, maybe 50 rounds is a little too much. I mean, you want to focus a little bit shorter term. I like 36. It gives you a very I think ideal look from past performance on a whole, but yet is recent enough to tell you who's in good form leading up to whatever tournament you're looking at. And Jordan Spieth, again, number one, had a great year. Morikawa, Reed, Answer, Hoffman, Casey Rom. These are the top players in the world. So if we want to look at a very short, like who's in amazing form coming into this tournament, just maybe the past couple weeks or maybe the past month or so. Patrick Cantlay, number one, no surprise, the Memorial winner at Muirfield. Morikawa, Shane Lowry, Brandon Grace, Spieth, Kokrak. 8 rounds is a little bit short for me. Like I said, I generally do 36, but let's do 24 for this exercise. Scoring relative to par, we're going to set this at difficult. Being a major, most often is the case, scores are going to be very high. It's going to be very, very difficult to get birdies and to stay under par. So that is one of the good filters that I use, especially during major weeks. If the scoring relative to par is difficult, you're going to want to see who plays well in very tough conditions. Bryson DeChambeau, number one. Xander Schauffele, number two. Should be no surprise. He always plays well when the course is difficult, when the conditions get difficult, when the field is tough. I mean, He doesn't have a major win, but Xander Schauffele is always at or near the top of the leaderboard, seemingly the past 2 years of majors. Jordan Spieth, Jon Rahm, Patrick Reed, Morikawa. I mean, again, top players of the world. If we take off the scoring relative to par, let's look at POA, because these are POA greens this week. You're going to want to see who putts well on POA greens. Well, we got a little bit of a change now. So it's Louis Oosthuizen, who's number one in the past 24 rounds. Oh, sorry, just getting cut off. Last 24 rounds on POA greens. Louis number one, Matt Kuchar number two, and he's actually been playing some pretty good golf in the past 24 rounds. Somebody who's definitely flying under the radar. And then, you get some big names here: Jon Rahm, DeChambeau, Patrick Rogers. His approach and around the green game has been not good, but he's putting well on POA. Patrick Reed, short game aficionado. Webb Simpson, always very good putting and around the green. Stinson's actually putt well on POA in the past 24 rounds. Adam Hadwin, always known as a good putter. So these are some names. These are some cheap names. I'll say cheap by DFS salary terms that, at least on the surface, rank out pretty well on POA greens, putting on POA greens. Then we can look at the rough here is always very long, always, even when it's just the Farmers Insurance Open at Torrey Pines. But with it being U.S. Open week, you can expect that this rough will be nasty. And if we look at the last 24 rounds with long rough, Tony Finau is actually number one, and that is a little bit shocking. He's always known as a bomber. He hits it a long way, but he has really improved his short game. And while I'm not terribly confident in Tony Finau's win chances this week, he does putt POA fairly well. He's very good when the conditions get difficult. He's never been a good putter anyway. So, POA versus Bermuda versus Bent, he's not fantastic by any means with the flat stick. But he's had some pretty respectable finishes, and the putting was never there. I mean, he absolutely threw away strokes on the green. Can you imagine if these were just a little bit negative? He's looking at top 10s, top 5s at these tournaments. Tony Finau, I said that I wasn't looking at him, as a win, but, if you find a week where Tony Finau maybe isn't even this high in tee to green, but is playing well enough off the tee with his approaches, and you find a week where he actually, doesn't lose 8,000 strokes to the field on the green, you're going to find yourself with a breakout win for Tony Finau. I don't know if it's this week. I have my doubts, but I would not be surprised to see Tony Finau at the top of the leaderboard based on this. I think this right here is going to prevent him from winning this tournament, but I would not be surprised at all if you saw him at the top of the leaderboard, top 5, top 10. I mean, 10th at the Masters. Masters stats are always proprietary, so you only get the total strokes gained from Augusta. But, he played well at the Masters, played well at the PGA. Congressional, these big-time tournaments, he's been playing well. This same course, earlier this year, he got second. So I would not be surprised to see Tony Finau up there on the leaderboard. And at 8,900, he's not going to absolutely break the bank on your DFS teams. Having said that, I imagine Tony Finau is going to be pretty popular, and he is very popular in the betting community, as in outright betting. Excuse me. So Finau is someone to look at, but again, as we'll talk about tomorrow and especially Wednesday, he's going to be pretty chalky, I think, in terms of DFS. But when you're talking, coming back to talking about around the green, with long rough, Kikuyu, Tommy Fleetwood has always been a short game player. Christian Bezuidenhout's always been a short game player. Jordan Spieth is just flat good. Harris English, Scotty Scheffler is a name that keeps popping up. He played well. I believe it was at the Memorial. Solo third at the Memorial. Missed the cut at the Charles Schwab, but played well at the PGA. Comp course, Genesis, he played really, really well. The Farmers, it says he missed the cut, clearly. It doesn't just say that. He clearly missed the cut. But how many times do you expect somebody to lose 4 strokes on somebody who, is fairly whack-a-mole? He's bound to lose 3, gain 4.5, gain 3, even. So if you find a week where he pops with his 3.3 or the 4.6, you're going to get a Scotty Scheffler week. You're banking on finding that week. And if he plays, to this kind of baseline here, like he did at Torrey in January, but this, you find a good week, Scotty Scheffler is one that you could find some value on. Patrick Reed, just on me up. Patrick Reed, short game aficionado, just incredible short game player. Cantlay, Fratelli is always known as a short game player. So that gives you an idea of who around the green wise in long rough, who should be able to save themselves when they get into trouble, because there's no if on this course and in this tournament. You're going to get into trouble. The last thing I want to look at is this right here. This course is going to play very long, over 7,400, and we're just going to look at a quick overview, strokes gained total. JT, Rory, Brooks, Rahm, Xander, DJ, top players in the world. When courses get long, they're generally tougher. The cream rises to the top. So the next thing I want to do is kind of take a really, really in-depth look. Really dive into some of this data that's in front of us here. What I have here is the Farmers Insurance Open from this year in January. We're going to ignore Torrey Pines North. For the Farmers Insurance, Torrey Pines has a north and a south course, and players will split, say Thursday they'll play the north course, Friday they play the south, and then they cut, and vice versa, start on south and then play north. For the U.S. Open, it's completely Torrey Pines South, which is the harder of the two courses. So when this was the Farmers Insurance, it was a par 72. We talked about last night on the initial research show that they have changed the par 5/6 into a long par 4. They did shorten it, but it's a long par 4 playing about 515 yards, which makes this a par 71 now. The greens are POA, we've been talking about. For this, for the Farmers Insurance Open, scoring relative to par was difficult, and that's a very common theme here at Torrey Pines, as we'll see here in a second. For me, green firmness doesn't come into play all too much because this is the U.S. Open. I imagine they're going to let it get burnt out a little bit, but it's hard to say. Green firmness is not something I try to predict. I just more so go by the in-depth analytics of the putting stats. Hitting fairways generally at Torrey Pines is very, very difficult, and you can see that from round 1. But earlier this year, it was average to easy. I believe they had some rain that week. Don't quote me on that, but generally speaking, hitting fairways is pretty difficult at this course. And another thing to factor in too, a lot of players play conservative. They don't take on the fairway bunkers. They don't take the risk line. They club down, as the industry says. They club down and leave themselves much further irons for approaches. Rough length, always long. It's going to be even longer being a major. Course is always over 7,400. Wind, we talked about a little bit in the initial research show. It looks very benign. Very, very beautiful conditions. Mid-70s. No breeze, I believe. No, not even gusts above 10 miles an hour. Looks like a perfect week for the U.S. Open weather-wise. But we showed this a little bit last night. This was the leaderboard from January. Patrick Reed was your clear dominant winner that week. He got out to that amazing first round and just kind of, I don't want to say coasted from there, but he had the tournament well in hand after that amazing Thursday. Hovland, Schauffele, Finau, Wilsey, Ryan Palmer. So, I mean, the good players generally will pop at the top of the leaderboard here at Torrey Pines. But I wanted to bring this up, really kind of look at how low the scoring was, what kind of players, generally speaking, rose to the top of this leaderboard. You have big hitters, but around the green specialists too, like Finau, not a great putter, but certainly very good off the tee. Has been better with his irons. Is very good around the green and short game. Xander Schauffele, just a solid all-around golfer. Victor Hovland, very good off the tee. Patrick Reed, short game player. Henrik Norlander, he is his approaches are generally pretty good. He's kind of hit and miss off the tee. He's not very good around and short of the green. But you look here, he tied for second at the Farmers because his around the green game that week was pretty good. But you look here, last week at the Palmetto, bad. Was not, under average at the Memorial, bad at the Wells Fargo, bad at the RBC. So around the green game is not something that he's known for. So this was one of the weeks where he popped and actually had a good around the green week at Torrey. I wouldn't count on that. So generally speaking, Henrik Norlander is a iron player. Let's see. That's the Genesis. Where did it go? I think I closed out that tab, unfortunately. Well, you saw the leaderboard there. Torrey Pines, generally the best players rise to the top at the leaderboard. But another great thing about Fantasy National, you can go back and look year over year how the course played. And so, for example, we saw these stats here in that previous tab. Difficult relative par, Green Japoa, over 7,400 yards. But, so say 2020, let's see, where's there? But in 2020, the green firmness was medium, whereas last year it was medium and easy, soft. I think one was difficult, one round. They lowered the rough. The green speeds were lightning fast that week. So it's just neat to see how they set up the golf course year over year to give it a little bit of a new look and a challenge to these players. No surprise here. You can see for the past, 8, 12 rounds, it's been calm. Calm wins. That's, nothing new expected this week. POA is the predominant green. Hitting fairways has always been difficult at this course. So this year, like I said, I think they had some rain that softened the course up, made it a little bit better to to hit the fairway. But you can see here 2020, 2019, 2018, even down here into 2017. I mean, it's always been difficult to hit these fairways at Torrey Pines. That's why there's such a premium this week, at least to me, on off the tee. You've got to be able to, to find the fairway so you can give yourself a chance at par on these very, very difficult par fours at Torrey Pines. I'm going to go back and see here. Tournament history. That's not what I wanted. I want past course conditions. Now I've lost it. So these are the historic conditions for Torrey Pines. I mentioned comp courses earlier. A comp course is a course that is set up similarly to the course in question, this week being Torrey Pines. That can go from the same architect to the same length. Perhaps like a coastal versus a inland course. One of the top comp course for this week is Riviera, the Genesis Open. And there's a few comp courses, and I'll get to that here in a second. But one of the biggest ones is Riviera, like I mentioned, for the Kikuyu fairways and rough. Generally, the Genesis is an invitational, so the top players in the world are there. And this was the leaderboard this year in February. I believe it is the third week of February, and this is the week that Max Homa beat Tony Finau in that playoff, where they played hole 10, which hole 10 is a drivable par 4, complete risk reward hole, and Max Homa drove to the trunk of a tree, basically, had what seemed like no shot, hit an amazing recovery and 2-putt, while Tony Finau 3-putt. So Max Homa won that week. Sam Burns, solo third, ended up later winning this year. Cameron Smith's been a winner this year. But another good idea on the types of players who play well at these comp courses. Short game. Fitzpatrick's always been known for short game. Hovland's a bomber. Rahm's, just all around very talented. Jones has always been a good short game player. DJ, for as much as DJ is known for his length, he's a very good short game player. So Riviera is while it's easier to hit the fairways at Riviera, and it's not as long as Torrey Pines, it's still a pretty good comp course, and you see here at Riviera, short game players do pretty well. I am tending towards more off the tee than around the green, just because at Torrey Pines, with these bunkers and with the rough being so tall, so gnarly, as they say, if you're not hitting your approaches and finding the greens, you're in a world of hurt as it is. Now, perhaps the best of the best, around the green players will be able to save themselves, but I'm more so trying to focus on the guys who are just going to hit the fairways and hit their greens, and then worry about the putting there. But I wanted to show you this comp course earlier this year. This is the Riviera Genesis Open leaderboard from late February, but earlier this year. Another comp course. This was the 2019 PGA. One of the best comp courses I have seen, based on length and rough length and difficulty to par and POA greens, matches line and line, is Bethpage Black. Bethpage in New York, or around New York, just a monster of a course. It is it's pretty famous. I like that course, and it when you line it up with Torrey Pines, it lines up pretty well. And should be no shock, since it was in the year 2018 or 2019, Brooks Koepka was your winner, because he was winning everything. Brooks beat DJ. Cantlay and Spieth were up there. Matt Wallace, Luke List had an amazing week. Must have been really, really good on the greens that week. Let's see. 2019. Boy, we got to scroll all the way down here. 2019. I thought it was at the PGA. Yeah. Let's hear it. Oh, yeah, 6 at the PGA. Yeah. Luke List is not a good putter, and he gained 7 strokes on the green that week. So, bit of an outlier, to say the least. But Luke List up there, Sung Kong, Kuchar, Adam Scott, EVR, Rory, Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland's somebody to look out for this week too, and I'll get into in the player breakdown and the DFS tactics. But I like Woodland this week a little bit. Spoiler alert. But I just want to show you that leaderboard too, because Bethpage Black, everything I have seen is a very good comp course for Torrey Pines, and this is a premier field, a major championship. Who rises to the top here, and then the last comp course that I kind of wanted to look at is Whistling Straits, the 2018 U.S. Open at Whistling Straits. You can see here scoring was difficult. Green firmness was they were firm greens. I don't know what they're going to be at Torrey Pines. Generally, they're not firm, but we'll see. The only difference between Shinnecock, I said Whistling Straits, I apologize, it's Shinnecock Hills. The 2018 U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills. Hitting the fairways at Shinnecock was easy. Here it's going to be very difficult. That's the only difference I've seen between the two. It was a very long course that year. And because it was in the year 2018 or 2019, your winner was Brooks Koepka. But his score was +1. It played amazingly difficult that week. Brooks, Tommy Fleetwood, DJ, Patrick Reed, Tony Finau. Tony Finau keeps popping up. So, like I said, I've hammered it home a little bit earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if at the top of the leaderboard. I think his putting is going to prevent him from winning this week. Terrell Hatton, Daniel Berger, who has always been at the top of my models this week. We'll get into that later in the week. Stinson had a little bit of flash in 2018. Xander, Rose. So I wanted to kind of really dig in on these comp courses, see what was going on, what similar style of players kind of kept popping up. See if we can glean any insight into that. I'm just kind of looking through here. We've been through the Torrey Pines Farmers Insurance Open. It's just difficult to hit the fairways. The greens were fast. Let's see. Green firmness. Yeah, they've kept it at medium to soft the past couple of years. They did have some firm in 2018. So it'll be interesting to see what the U.S. Open, like the officials at the U.S. Open, do for as far as green firmness. As if you remember last night in the initial research show, there's a lot of undulation, a lot of contour to these greens that will make it difficult already enough for the players. If you add some firmness to it, it might get not necessarily unplayable, but very pushes that line quite a bit. I'll come back here at the home page, base page here for Fantasy National. Something else that I kind of want to look at here. For the last 24 rounds, let's just look at Torrey Pines South. If I knew how to spell, because O comes before P. Torrey Pines South. Oh, not that one. That one. Torrey Pines South. I have 24 rounds. Most of these guys won't have 24. In fact, let's shrink that to 12. That way we're not going back to 2013. The last 12 rounds. Bubba Watson. Bubba Watson is number 1 for strokes gained total. Tee to green and ball striking, off the tee approach. Let's take a look at Bubba and let's filter on Farmers. Yep, there we go. Farmers. So you had the Wells Fargo Farmers in 2021. He missed the cut earlier this year. He's had some pretty bad form this year. Let's just be honest. But 2020 he came in 6th, and then you got to go all the way back to 2014 Farmers here. That's why I don't like to do that many rounds when we're focused on a specific narrow condition like just Torrey Pines. But it doesn't bode well if he missed the cut earlier this year at Torrey Pines. But if we look at his season so far, you know, he made the cut, but, you know, barely, and then fell apart on the weekend at the PGA. He had a couple of good weeks here, 3 good weeks actually, with the Masters and the Valspar and Wells Fargo. Missed the cut of the Players. WGC, this is WGC, it says WGC Mexico. This was WGC at Congressional in Florida, since Chapultepec and Mexico were restricting with COVID regulations. Genesis, the comp course, missed the cut at the Farmers. So he has not been in good form this year at all. But with his success at the Farmers in previous years, it's worth a look for Bubba. And POA is his best putting surface by far. He actually is positive on POA as opposed to Bent or Bermuda. So Bubba Watson, Patrick Reed, no surprise he was the winner this year. That makes sense. Adam Scott, Tony Finau, Rory, Mark Leishman, Rose, Kokrak, Gary Woodland, who keeps popping up, John Rahm, Hovland. So there's common names that keep popping up across these leaderboards on these comp courses and earlier this year, so on. Let's actually shrink this down to the last 8 rounds at just Torrey Pines. So Patrick Reed actually rises just because of this, probably this year. Although I think he's played Torrey Pines pretty well in his career. Let's look at Farmers. Yeah, oh yeah. So Patrick Reed is somebody to look at this week. This year, 6th last year, 13th. Let's see. Unfortunately, that is getting cut off for you all. Dang. So it looks like the bottom you can see here is this. So I'm going to exclude 2013. So 2018, he was 23rd. 2019, he was 13th. 2020, he was 6th, and then won this year. He has had a very immaculate record here at Torrey Pines. And there's a reason you're paying a bit more of a premium on him in DraftKings and in the betting window. Rory, Adam Scott, Tony Finau. So you can see how Bubba fell off because we narrowed it to 8 rounds instead of what was it, 12, I guess, 16. Yeah, last 12, when that was back in 2016 and even before that. So yeah, Torrey Pines statistics here. I'm just trying to see other names that might pop up. Tom Hoagie, there's a name for you. He's 12th. Just at Torrey Pines. Again, this is a very, very, I understand, very, very narrow search or statistical model. But it's interesting to see because Torrey Pines is played every year. See who has continued success when they go to Torrey Pines. I mentioned how Riviera is a comp course let's look and see who plays well at Riviera, which is where the Genesis is. And again, this is just the last 8 rounds at Riviera. Max Homa, no surprise, he won this year. Sam Burns, DJ, John Rahm, who seemingly is in the top 10 of all of these leaderboards and statistical models. And that's why he's the betting favorite at 10-1. Wyndham Clark is tied for 5th at Riviera. Tony Finau, Bryson, Victor Hovland, Cantlay. Let's look at, that's interesting. Wyndham Clark. What was Wyndham Clark? All right, so there you go. He's very good on POA greens. Kind of worries me here. Average strokes gained by round difficulty. When it starts to get difficult, he usually doesn't play his best. So that's one thing that kind of worries me, and I'll go into this, in the player breakdown. But this explains why he has success at Riviera. Riviera generally brings the top around the green players up to the top of the leaderboard, and he is, generally speaking, one of the better short game players around. In fact, the past, for 9 events, he's gained strokes around the green, and the one he didn't, he lost less than 1. Problem was that week, the rest of his game was shit too. More shit. So that explains, at least to me, why Wyndham Clark comes up at Riviera. Not necessarily somebody I'm looking at this week. Was 8th at the Genesis. Made the cut, 32nd at the Farmers. Had a pretty good off the tee week that week. Don't know if that's something you can completely count on from him, because it's a bit whack-a-mole here. He'll lose. Where was it? Let's see. Farmers. Oh, okay, sorry. I was looking at strokes gained total. His off the tee was 3. Then the next, 5 tournaments, he loses strokes. The next 6 he gains. Then he loses. So he's Jekyll and Hyde off the tee, and as I've discussed this week, I feel like off the tee is going to be paramount for success. So there's a look at the comp course, strokes gained total, and a look at Torrey Pines specifically. I think with the ending of the data dive, I will bring up what I have for my model as of right now. And again, I always tweak this during the week to see, what I kind of feel when I listen to other content creators, other people in the know in the industry, how they're looking at it. I'm always going to value strokes gained approach. I've mentioned that time and time again, and even earlier in this show. I think off the tee is going to be paramount. You're gonna have to have some distance, and more importantly, you're gonna have to find some fairways. And if you have both, that's great. I'm only putting around the green at 5%. If this was Riviera, I would certainly increase that. But as I talked about at Torrey Pines, if you're relying on around the green anyway, you're going to be in a world of hurt. But I do have it at 5% because when you are in trouble, the best players in the world around the green can certainly have a chance to save themselves, as opposed to somebody who is just not as proficient in that. Putting, I generally don't put a lot of stock into. I'm actually putting quite a bit of stock into it. 10% putting. Scrambling, kind of like the around the green, because people are going to have to scramble this week. You're not going to hit every green. You're not going to hit all the fairways. You're going to have to scramble your way around here. So I got that at 5%. Proximity, and I mentioned this in the initial research show. Torrey Pines is notorious for having approach shots 3 to 4% higher than the tour average from these two distances, from 175 to 200 and 200 plus, just because guys choose to take the strategic approach, the conservative approach, not take on fairway bunkers, and leave themselves with longer irons in. So I wanted to see who is really, really keen from those distances. A lot of times, if I feel like there is one proximity range that is prominent, I might put it at 10 or 15% if it's the only one. But because of Torrey Pines, I wanted to see really who's dialed in from this distance. I might scale it back a little bit throughout the week, but just for this kind of run through in this phase of the model, I want to see who's really good with their long irons. And with the putting on this POA and 3-putt avoidance, again, it kind of comes into the strokes gained approach. As long as you're hitting your irons where you need to, you should be not having to rely on lag putting or distance putts for birdie. But the course is difficult. You're not going to hit your irons precisely the way you need to every time because, I mean, this is a major. They've got the course set up difficult. If you find yourself out of position, at least on the green, who is good at avoiding 3-putts? Who are your good lag putters? Who are good, who's good from distance? So that's kind of where I'm looking at right now in the data model, at least for me. Comment below, what do you think I should focus on? What kind of stat are you keen on this week? But I'll load this up real quick. This was for Riviera. I'm actually going to set this for all, just the last, and this is also, so this is, I've got it set at last 8 rounds. Let's see who's in just peak form right now, the past maybe couple tournaments or 3 tournaments. Scotty Scheffler, 3rd off the Memorial. Been playing some pretty strong golf lately. Did miss the cut at the Charles Schwab, but top 10 at the PGA. He's made 7 of his last 8 cuts. Generally playing really well. Had an off week at the Charles Schwab. I can understand why. Top 20 at the Masters. Even before the Players. Top 5 at Congressional, Genesis, which was the comp earlier, top 20. 7th at the Waste Management. He did miss the cut earlier this year here at Torrey Pines. You can see why he had lost 4 strokes on the greens. If that happens again, yeah, he's going to struggle. But when he loses strokes, generally speaking, he's still going to make the cut. But when he has these tournaments where he absolutely dials in the putter, there's a lot of high finishes. So Scotty Scheffler won. Sam Burns, who's won, in the recent past. Jason Kokrak's won. Louis Oosthuizen had an incredible PGA. Victor Hovland, Tyrrell Hatton had a great Sunday at Palmetto. Brian Harmon, there's a name for you. Definitely falls into the category of strategic player. Definitely leaves himself with a lot of longer irons in, but very good putting, very good with his irons, long irons especially. Good putter. So, yeah, Colin Morikawa, Xander, Paul Casey. Again, John Rahm, Tony Finau. All these guys are top in the world for a reason. But this is the short term form. Like I said, I like to go 36 rounds just to give you some more what I'll call stabilizing the data. Who's played well over a long period of time. Past couple months, 3 months. And Daniel Berger, as it was last night, is number 1 in my rankings for now. Really dialed in from the distances that Torrey Pines demands of you. Very good at avoiding 3-putts. His scrambling and around the green are not great, but like we've talked about, I think it's going to play less of a factor this week. because everybody's going to have to scramble at some point. We'll just see. I believe in Daniel Berger. I believe he's a salary bargain. I imagine he's going to be pretty chalky. But that's probably chalk I'll be willing to eat. And because we're getting ready to wrap up this show, he's definitely. I have a outright win bet on Daniel Berger with a top 5. Double down on that. I have a top 20 on a player that we'll leave that a little bit of suspense for tomorrow and Wednesday. But there's a top 20 on a name that's very, very high odds. I can't wait to get into that, and he's definitely my sleeper this week. Xander Schauffele's just a little bit. I mean, I'm always going to back Xander Schauffele in a major. He's just too short a price for me. There are quite a bit of values that I like on the betting board as of now. I've got Daniel Berger at 50-1 right now. I like Max Homa, who won at Riviera as a comp course. I like Max Homa this week, and he's at 90-1, and he's good on POA. He's better. He's not necessarily great, but he's better when the course is difficult. He's not known for around the green, but again, just because of the things that I've mentioned, I don't think around the green's going to come into a big effect here. He's in good form coming off the Memorial. Did miss the cut at the PGA at Kiowa, but top 10 at Valspar, top 10 at the Arnold Palmer. Won the Genesis at Riviera earlier this year. He won at Pebble Beach. Pebble Beach is another comp course, because the coastal California course, long, rough generally. It's a club down course, like Torrey Pines is. And he did top 20 here at Torrey Pines earlier this year. I like Max Homa a lot. I have not placed that bet, but I'm 95% even higher certain that I'm going to put a win at Max Homa at 90-1 right now. I'll probably put a top 10 on him as well. Maybe a top 5. I don't know yet. Top 5 right now, he's at 16-1. Top 5, 16-1. Top 10, 7-1. That's Max Homa. I like Max Homa quite a bit this week. Another name that I like is Corey Connors. He's 13th here in my model. Corey Connors right now is at 70-1 to win. The only thing that scares me, and you can see here, he is terrible. Awful on POA. That's awful. He's not a great putter anyway, but POA being his worst surface really kind of scares me for the same reason it scares me on Tony Finau. You're going to have to be able to putt this week. But he's in fantastic form. I mean, look at this. 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. He's made his last 10 cuts in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 top 10s. 2 more top 20s. I mean, he's in immaculate form. He's gained off the tee in 10 straight. He's gained an approach 9 of those 10. The last time he played, being the Memorial, he normally is a very, very, very. I mean, he's elite with his irons. I mean, you can see here 5, 5, 6, 5. I'm more willing to count this as an outlier. It was just a bad week. Everybody has them. He's never good. There's never been known to be good around the green. And again, it's not a big emphasis for me this week. Putting, he's kind of hit and miss, but he used to be consistently this. The fact that he's now essentially breaking even gaining some. I mean, he gains 2 at the RBC Heritage in South Carolina at Harbortown. Gains strokes, comes in 4th. Gains strokes putting, 14th. Gains strokes putting in these two, 7th and 3rd. Corey Connors is a name I'm really looking at as well. And you take away the Genesis, which was the comp course, and he did not play well that week. Lost a lot on the greens. You take away that missed cut, so he's made 10 in a row, 10 of 11, and then you come down here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So in his past 20 tournaments, he's made the cut in 19 of them. That's some elite play right there. Maybe not the top end, like consistent top fives, but they're not terrible finishes. These are top 20s, some top 30s. I mean, he was 37th at the Farmers earlier this year at Torrey Pines. Was great off the tee, middling with the approach. Around the green was basically even, and he lost a stroke on the greens. So Corey Connors is his name. And granted, he comes up high on my model just because of how good he is with his irons. But he's also somebody else I'm kind of keen on this week. He's 70-1 right now. Let's see. I'm trying to think of other names that are, just kind of popping up here. I don't want to spend too much time because this is what we're going to be talking about in the player-by-player breakdown. Just some names that are kind of sticking out. Terrell Hatton's at 33. I mean, top 10 player in the world. Gary Woodland, I've mentioned, he's 66-1. I like him at this course just because it's a club down course. So yeah, John Rahm's your favorite right now at 10-1. And I believe you have 3 players. I think Xander Schauffele, Justin Thomas, I think, is at 14-1. Let me see. Xander, 14. Bryson DeChambeau's at 14. And Dustin Johnson's at 14. And then you have a couple of 16s and 18s. But those are your top 4 betting favorites. And there's an obvious reason that John Rahm is your favorite at 10-1. He was going to win the Memorial. You can't convince me otherwise, had he not tested positive for COVID. The only thing with Rahm is he has had to quarantine since the Memorial. I believe he comes out of quarantine this week on Wednesday, the day before the U.S. Open. But I don't see how that's going to affect his play terribly much. There's a reason he's, I think, second in the world, maybe third. So anyway, that is a look at the data dive for the 2021 U.S. Open. Again, smash the like button, especially for the extra content tomorrow where I break down every player. Remember to subscribe. I always appreciate the support. And I will see you tomorrow night. But until then, may all your bets be profitable.